What's going on, everyone? I'm Jaren, and today we are talking about Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. This is a prequel spin-off and origin story of the renegade warrior Furiosa before her encounter and team up with Mad Max. Visionary director George Miller is back to deliver a refreshing chapter to his post-apocalyptic odyssey. 9 years ago, when I was anticipating Mad Max Fury Road, I just realized that I knew who the character was, but I had not seen the first three films with Mel Gibson. So I got to watch the first three films. The first one didn't necessarily hold my attention. I guess that was just an acquired taste to where I was very much used to the modern take of revenge thrillers, and it just didn't necessarily get there for me. I watched the second movie. Now that was a beautiful blockbuster, the cup of tea I needed to pair with Fury Road. Beyond Thunderdome, let's just say that was a Peter Pan-ass script that I just did not need to watch. And then we got to Mad Max Fury Road, and that was the adrenaline rush that I was looking for. Although a lot of people may have kind of adopted this as one of the best action film in years, I think that's a little bit of an overstatement, but the movie did blow me away. The supporting character that got introduced to us, as well as fought alongside Max, was the talented Charlize Theron. She is a wonderful standout. I love her performance in this, and she became a big fan favorite that a lot of people favored her more than Tom Hardy's entrance as the titular icon. And right after Fury Road, everybody was wondering if George Miller was going to do another Mad Max movie, and then he announced that he was going to do a Furiosa spinoff. And I was so excited because I wanted to see Theron back in the role. And then he talked about doing an origin story, and I was like, oh, they're going to change the actress, aren't they? Long and behold, we did get the announcement that Anya Taylor-Joy was going to be the young Furiosa. I love anything that she does, but she looks nothing like Theron. And we also got more announcements that Chris Hemsworth was going to be her opposite, the villain of the story, and I was just very curious, very excited to see what kind of talent, what kind of just magic that Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth were going to bring under the direction of George Miller. Now, upon the release of the movie, I was hearing nothing but rave reviews, 4 to 5 stars on Letterboxd, and I was just so excited, so pumped to get to the theater, and I finally get out, and I thought the movie was just okay. I know. I don't know what everyone else was smoking. I wish I had the same thing, but I wanted to love it. I really did. There was just something wrong, something missing. There was just something that didn't sit right when it came to the structure, the details, the pacing of how they decided to tell this origin story. It felt underdone and overdone all at the same time. Starting off with the performances, now although Charlize Theron may have solidified herself as the role of Furiosa, I think Anya Taylor-Joy really delivers a much more poignant, much more fleshed out and visceral take on the Wasteland Warrior, almost how Mad Max began in this apocalypse. And, you really get to see her in the beginning kind of emote a lot of this vengeance and with such little words to say, almost in parallel to how Max was. And they really drag out that tragic beginning, especially with a much younger Furiosa, since this really spans across time. So Anya Taylor-Joy doesn't necessarily inhabit the titular role up until an hour in. Chris Hemsworth is an absolute beast from start to finish as Dr. Dementis. His performance as a villain really took me by surprise and really stole the spotlight. He really knew how to chew up the scenery and just be so maliciously evil and yet magnetic that when he succeeds in his atrocities, they're really shocking and fucked up. Now, one of the little arguments, some of the complaints that I would get when talking about the Mad Max franchise is how this movie could be style over substance. Well, for those still seeking validation, this prequel takes its sweet time in building out all that worldly stuff, all the little details where we learn a little bit more about the factions and the kingdoms that trade for goods or who will kill and protect for other precious and limited resources. And I think that really enriches with everything we know about the Mad Max universe, and it does somehow overshadow just the main story, especially in the second act where it feels just a little overstuffed. But on the bright side, we do get some of those little details, some of that little, foreshadowing of how Furiosa progressed her character to learn a bunch of these new skills, have this kind of knowledge, and it really complements of, what Fury Road has already had to offer and showcase. Speaking of style, the aesthetic from the last installment bleeds back into this one. So I really love the costume and production design that really goes into Miller's vision, especially with the razor edge road machines, the lethal arsenal, and some of the more gruesome special effects and prosthetics and makeup. Just, I was surprised at how just grisly and graphic this movie was opposed to the last four films. And there's this little bit that kind of grossed me out, including Chris Hemsworth's nipples. Now, Fury Road is very well known for its immaculate utilization of practical effects and CGI, and I don't know what happened within the last 9 years with this production team, but there are countless and blatantly obviously unfinished VFX work that it really shows, and I'm talking about the way that characters would move across a digital background, whether it be stunts and action sequences that really look like video game cuts, and a lot of the color correction just seemed very polished compared to the last movie. Getting into some of the action sequences, I really thought this movie was going to be a balls to the wall, pedal to the metal revenge thriller, but they really focused on dragging out the tragic events that really spanned across Furiosa's years as a child to a young adult. And don't get me wrong, there are some really cool explosions and chase sequences, but they are very far and few in between. I mean, half the time we're watching characters drive from point A to point B, then to point C, back to point B, and then eventually back to A again. It was a lot of rising action effect going on, like a lot of suspense and action would kind of build up and then stop. Build up and then stop. There was a lot of edging going on. Going back to the narrative and a lot of the details that they wanted to share with this origin story, like I said before, they really drag out the first hour at introducing Dementis and a lot of the tragic events that befell with young Furiosa. And then I was just thinking to myself at one point, especially at the 30 to 40 minute mark, I was like, when is the story going to move on? We're just getting a little bit of nothing. Like, the event happened, let's move on. And then we get to Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa, and we're an hour in already, and we decided to shift focus away from her and really focus on the economic conflict of Immortan Joe and Dementis. And it was just a really big chore to stay interested in. And you get a little bit of Furiosa and a lot of the little things that she's doing, but none of it ever really warranted the grudge, the big fiery conflict that happens between her and Immortan Joe in Fury Road. And by the time we get to the last 40 minutes of the movie, we get introduced to a key event called the 40-Day War, and I really wish that got played out and fully realized. And it was treated as a montage. It was just really in a rush to get to the ending of this movie to connect all the little dots, and I was unfulfilled. The one thing that I will praise this movie's existence is the final confrontation and revelation between Furiosa and Dementis. You can tell that this was a particular scene that Miller was very proud to direct because it delivers the powerhouse performance between Taylor-Joy and Hemsworth, and it really, really shows. And there's just something that was very understood, especially in a lot of Korean revenge thrillers, about suffering over pulling the final trigger, like in a lot of westernized American films. And just the way that they went about with it was very poetic, very sorrowful, and so beautiful, all in one swoop, that just the fates of what happened with our antagonist and our protagonist really stuck with me far after the credits ended. Overall, this installment was way too fucking long and really falls into my middle ranking of all the Mad Max movies, from my favorite to least favorites. Honestly, I wish this was the blockbuster that I was looking for. I wish this was the blockbuster that I was going to love and praise. But I really respect Miller for having the drive, no pun intended, to really continue doing movies like this. I mean, he started the first one back in, 79? And I definitely will add this to the collection, but this is by no means better than Fury Road by a mile. Alright guys, that's all I got to share about that movie. Go ahead and check it out if you want. I know I'm definitely going to want to watch this movie and watch Fury Road right after, so Yeah. In the meantime, thank you guys again so much for taking some time out of your day to hear me talk some movies. I'm Jaren Ugbanawag. Look forward to more reviews, and I will see you guys at the theater. In the meantime, take care.